You're listening to the Cantina Cast, your home for thought-provoking Star Wars talk. Join Albert and Jonesy in breaking down the latest news, trailers, movies, and of course, your favorite characters from a galaxy far, far away.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Cantina Cast. My name is Albert Padilla, and this is episode 436. Our discussion review of Brotherhood, one of the more recent novels that we've now had a new one come out since then, but one of the more recent novels by Mike Chen, and a book that we've been really just had on the back burner and haven't had a chance to get around to, much like a number of other things. So we're here to talk about it today. Pretty excited to talk about it. It's a book that was very surprising for me in a lot of different ways, both good and bad. How about that? I'll just leave it at that. So speaking of good, no bad. Yeah, see, I almost scared you there. Jonesy's with us tonight. Jonesy, welcome to the show. How are you doing?
I'm doing well, man. How are you?
I am doing fine. Just fine. Not good, not bad. Just fine.
You're right in the middle of the road.
Exactly.
Straddling the lanes a little bit, but you're still in the road.
It's the theme of the show. It's just good enough.
Just good
You know what I mean?
And it's ready when it's ready.
It's ready when it's ready. It's just what we shoot for, man. But before we get into the book, let's get a couple things out of the way with news. I know there's been a lot of talk on social media about this new, the documentary, Obi-Wan Kenobi, A Jedi's Return.
Right.
I'm pretty excited about this because I've had a chance to see some of the footage already, and you get that BTS stuff, and just seeing Hayden and, Ewan McGregor laughing, cutting up, joking around. I mean, that's the stuff that we want to live for and see because of, we got some of it, I think, in the prequel trilogy, but with this day and age and how big all the BTS stuff is, it feels like they did this purposely, intentionally, filmed alongside with the intent to release later down the road. So I'm feeling we're in for a lot of really cool surprises.
How do you feel about this? So this is the second behind the scenes docu-series that we've got really within just a couple of months of each other, like Light and Magic. And then we have this. Is this going to be is this a trend developing or a theme developing? I know they're not entirely the same, but is this something that we can expect more of, do you think?
I think so. I think if you look at what they're doing on the Marvel side, I mean, you almost expect this on the Marvel side, right? They're always going to have some kind of BTS. Usually it's a reel of some sort, but they go to great lengths to record a lot of that stuff, keep it in the can, and then release it later. So I don't know. Plus it's easy content for them, right? I mean, they're just slapping together a bunch of behind the scenes stuff and putting some fancy logos on there, and people are going to watch it. I mean, I particularly enjoy it. And, there's not a lot of production value that goes behind it. I don't mean anything by that. I just meant like, it's not a new TV series. So it's a pretty low hanging fruit kind of win. I think if you're talking about how do we provide content on Disney Plus, make it exclusive, make it things that you can't get anywhere else. I think it's an easy win for them.
Right. And to have a secondary crew kind of running behind the scenes just seems easy, I guess, for lack of a better word. I mean, there's still a whole production that goes into it, but
sure.
Yeah, but I'm with you though, capturing those moments in between. And again, to have this perspective of Ewan and Hayden Christensen at this point in their lives and this point in their career and this point of Star Wars.
Yeah.
Compared to what we had from a lot of the footage really in Attack of the Clones, I think was most of what I remember, and a little bit from Revenge of the Sith. Yeah, it'd be interesting to kind of compare and contrast a little bit too.
Exactly. Yeah.
But then also I think just to see these are like fun projects at this point. I mean, they take them very seriously, but these are like the fun projects now. When you come back at this stage of your career and you're like, I get to go do the things I want to do.
Right.
And I want to do Star Wars and I want to revisit these characters, and I get to do it with someone who I consider a really good friend.
Yeah.
So
kind of like this show. That's exactly how I feel about this show.
Oh, that's very sweet of you. I feel the same way.
Hey, you're welcome. You're welcome. Nice way to set me up for that. I know you did that on purpose.
Right. Yeah.
So one of the other things too is it's so funny. I did a recording of the Film Appraisers just recently with Josh and Joe, and I don't think I can say, or maybe I can. I don't know. I don't want to spoil anything, but all I'll say is about that show was recorded this just a couple days ago, and I think I laughed for almost a full hour and a half nonstop.
You have been so cagey about what movie you guys were going to watch. You will not tell me.
You it's just wait for it. It's coming. So, but that's not why I brought this up. So when we were, I guess in the post show, Joe had a question about Star Wars, and I was like, oh, okay, this is cool. We're diverging completely from the movie that we were talking about. But so they announced the 2 new Star Wars Jedi books reveal, right? 2 new Star Wars Jedi books. There was one which is what is it? Battle Scars? I forgot the name of it already.
Yeah, I believe so. Yeah.
Which is supposed to take place in between Fallen Order and the new what's the new one
Survivor.
called? Survivor, yeah. And his concern was whether or not he felt like he asked me, do you think you're going to have to read the book in order to kind of understand what happens in the video game? And I think it's a valid concern. I think it'd be foolhardy for Disney or whoever, Del Rey or whoever's making these decisions to say, you know what, we're gonna bookend this video game on a novel, because I think you're talking about a lot of, and no, again, no disrespect for anybody because I play both, but I think by and large you'll find you're talking about 2 different audiences, right?
Right.
And I think it'd be foolhardy for them to kind of say you have to read this book going into the video game. The best example that I felt like where it was probably where they found success with something like this before was Battlefront 2 and the Iden Versio. Yeah, Inferno Squad, right? Like that book you didn't have to read at all, really.
Yeah, you really didn't. Yeah. It really enhanced it, though.
It really enhanced the video game experience. And not only just from the characters, but even some of the stuff that was being said and referenced in the video game to the book, I think was amazing. So I think the game's going to stand on its own. I do like the idea that they're giving us a novel that's based on all of this, because that video game is so engrossing. It's so entrenching. It's so immersive. But once you get a book involved, it's a whole nother level. So I think we're just going to get to even more, I guess, more of that kind of feeling of really being there and getting in the heads of the characters and everything that's going on through the novel. So I'm actually kind of excited. But what do you think? What do you think about this? You know, them doing a novel for this. Do you think it's that big of a franchise at this point?
Is it that big of a franchise? No, but I think I'm with you though. I don't see a problem with these types of books though. And again, this is a really interesting era, and people connected with the video game so much that it just makes sense that you would want to continue that story. It takes so much effort and a huge team and a lot of cost to continue to do the video game, to do the voice characterizations, the scripts and the animation and the actual game and making it work, and the mechanics where you can take and create stories from it. I don't know if you could probably do it faster, right, than you can do a whole video game. And you can certainly do it a lot more effectively from a story aspect of it and putting that whole thing into production. And so I like this idea, though, that you can enhance the video game experience without sacrificing, your fans that are just going to play the video game.
Yeah.
Whereas your people who want to do both, or they just like the books, now they've got material that, like, oh, well, I've heard these characters, but I'm not really into video games, but I'd really like to understand who Cal Kestis is, or who is this Night Sister chick that keeps coming up. So I mean, those types of things would be really cool to expose more people to it that maybe aren't video games or gamers, and can't get into it or just don't want to.
So you kind of made me think of a good question here, and it's probably not a fair question, so don't sweat it. But do you think a book like this is written more for the video game fans, or is it more written for the novelists, the people that actually buy books?
That's a really tough question, because I could see where I'm guessing it's probably more gauged at the people who read books that don't want to play the video game.
Okay. And I'm with you. Like, I don't think there's a wrong answer here. I think it's one, it's the other, it's both. I think it's just whoever they can get. I was just looking also, they have the writers, Sam Maggs, who's a Canadian American author. And it looks like she's done some work on a number of other things too. And, funny, we were talking to Adam Christopher in that interview, and he was talking about these are the kind of things, like, he really enjoys doing these types of books because he already has established characters, and he can kind of continue to flesh out their backgrounds. Yeah, more freedom there sometimes. So yeah, I don't know. It looks like it's got all the ingredients of being potentially good, especially, again, like we mentioned with Twilight. What is it? Inferno Squad.
Right.
Which I thought was an amazing book. If you have not had a chance to read it, go read it. It's really good stuff.
It was very good. Hey, before we leave the film appraisers, of course, our good friends Joe and Josh, we're actually going to do I'm going to do a live stream with them this Friday on the 26th.
What?
We're going to do a live watch party of Nicolas Cage's Vampire's Kiss. So our old friend Jason from Satis from the Smoking and Drinking in Space is going to join us as well. So he's getting all of his F-bombs out of the way now. So but it's sure to be a lot of fun. It's going to be a little bit crazy. You can check it out, earglumedia.com/TFA live, and that'll forward you over to the link over on YouTube. And again, it'll be all live. We're going to watch, you can kind of watch our reactions to the entire movie. We're not going to broadcast the movie, clearly, I don't think. But anyway, it should be a lot of fun if you're not doing anything this Friday evening. I believe that's at 9 o'clock Central, but you have to go check that out. earglumedia.com/TFA live.
I think on that episode that I just recorded, I think I shared my feelings on Nick Cage. So I'll leave it for the episode. I won't share them here. I've got some very strong and passionate feelings about Nick Cage. That's all I'll say.
And if you're curious about the film appraisers, they go and they rate your favorite movies and they assign a value to it. And for Alberts, they're usually at the very bottom of the list of how much they would pay for it. But
easy now. Thank you. I was for a very long while there. My movie that one of the movies I brought was still very highly ranked.
Which one was that?
That was I don't even remember what it was.
It was classic.
It might have been Raiders. It might have been Raiders. Actually.
Oh, it probably was Raiders. Yeah.
But yeah. And what was your? I mean, I know you had one that.
I did Love Actually.
I don't want to throw dirt, but
I did Love Actually. Liam Neeson, man, star-studded cast, man. That was a great show.
Your value says otherwise, but don't worry. I set the bar. I reset the bar for you completely with this new one that's coming out.
True, we've all got an uplift. Okay, we are 12 minutes in. Let's thank some our Patreon subscribers. New member Jackson Abbott, who I'm pretty sure is running for office because that's a great political name, great politician name. Just joined our After Dark tier. Jackson, thanks again for signing up. And then Justin had leveled up to the now part of the tribe tier, which gives him access to potentially joining us on a show, which coincidentally we just did From a Certain Point of View with Rob, Lauren, and Mike talking about Rogue One, our top 3 moments from Rogue One. So thank you to them for joining us for that, and for Justin for upping his membership there. And again, are now part of the tribe members, Mike, Kathy, Rob, Lauren, Dante, Risk, and now Justin. Thank you so much for your support. And then the Rod tier, the Delusions of Grandeur tier. Thank you to Rod. Patreon this week on Thursday, we will actually be talking about Light and Magic, the 6-part docuseries that released, what was it, like a month ago?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, about a month ago.
So we'll just kind of give our thoughts and go through some of that. It was really cool. I really enjoyed it.
Yes. I think I almost finished a second viewing of it. I wasn't really putting show notes together, but now I have to. So excited to talk about that. It's actually really good if you've not had a chance. So
we're going to squeeze 6 hours worth of TV
into 5 hours worth of
10 hours worth of Patreon content. We squeezed it.
Squeeze it into that.
Right. But anyway, so thank you, Patreon members. If you're curious how to sign up or look for all of that, cantinacast.com/Patreon. And once again, that is the way to potentially join us on a show and talk about some of your favorite moments from Star Wars.
Yes, sir. Okay. Well, let's talk about our main topic tonight. And this is the long overdue episode where we're going to talk about Brotherhood. I guess let's get our opening thoughts out of the way.
Well, spoilers, first of all. We're going to spoil the whole book.
Yeah.
Yeah. If you're not used to it by now, welcome. But yeah, spoilers from here on out. So if you are sensitive and haven't quite read it yet, you have been fairly warned.
Okay, so what were your overall thoughts reading this book?
Overall thoughts, really solid book. Enjoyed Mike Chen's writing style quite a bit. I liked that it did get a little bit. It took a little while to get going. I think in some regards there were some really great moments as it was getting going. But as you got towards the end of the book, I think it really got interesting. I loved seeing Asajj Ventress in this book, and it was just like pure Asajj Ventress, like from just start to finish. It was great. Yeah. Mark Thompson did a fantastic job. Not Mark Thompson. Yeah, did Mark Thompson?
Mark Thompson did this one?
No, maybe it was William Demare. I think William Demare may have done this book. Oh my gosh, I can't remember who did the
look it up because I heard good things about the audio book of this for this one. So
yes. So but yeah, it was really solid though. I really enjoyed this quite a bit. So I will look that up while you give us your initial impressions.
Okay, I'll do the first impression of Kenobi. There goes. No, I'm kidding. I think this is a good book. I had some problems with the book, to be honest. And my issues are really not severe. So I don't want everybody to start freaking out or anything. Like I feel like it was a good book. I wouldn't say it was a great book. I feel like it was a good book. I saw our peers. I went and just looked to see because I was like, am I missing something? I could have sworn everybody was like going on. I heard a lot of people talk about this was the best canon novel that's come out recently in the last like 4 years. And I did. I found a number of people that said that. And while I respect those opinions, I didn't feel that was the case here. Now, again, Mike Chen's writing style, great. I love it. Short chapters like this, very easy to read. Man, I think I read this book the first time way back when, or at least I didn't finish it, but I think I read at least half of it within like one sitting at night. Like it was so fast and so quick to read, which I really enjoy. I like that. I didn't feel like I was getting bogged down. But when I went back to read it again as in preparation for this show or completed all of this, I realized where I have a problem with this book. And most of it goes back to and this is it's no mystery if you listen to the show. I'm not a big fan of the Star Wars politics. I like my politics like I like my coffee, lots of cream, lots of sugar. I found at times this book was a little heavy-handed for me personally around the politics stuff. And like even like some of the stuff that I could appreciate, like Kenobi's speech when he's like, he goes in this really great, massive speech at one point in the book, and it's really well written, but I was so freaking bored. Like I just was not connecting with it. And I've got a lot of other good things to say, but the other thing that really, I guess, wouldn't say bothered me, but I found it like the book is called Brotherhood, and it's about Anakin and Kenobi. But if you look, my math may be wrong, but I want to say you don't get Kenobi and Anakin working together until almost like 2/3 of the book in, right?
Yeah, you're about a third of the book left.
Right. It's almost in that act 3 is kind of when it starts. And for a book that's called Brotherhood, I felt like, okay, well, I mean, it's cool. I mean, there's other stuff that's going on, and it was a chance for Anakin to shine and Kenobi to shine. But I don't know. I would have wanted them to get together. And I was going in thinking this is going to be like, you know, them going from the very beginning, their relationship and working out that way. And then it gets there. And then the last third of the book is awesome. Like I really enjoyed the end of it. But sorry, you're going to say something.
No, yeah, and I apologize for interrupting. I think some of it though is them learning to adjust without each other in that regard, and also like starting to try to come to terms with what is their relationship, but within their own context of what they're experiencing in that moment. And so I think that was part of it, of why it was so important for them to be apart. I'm with you. It was a lot more interesting when they were together because Obi-Wan and Anakin and Obi-Wan. I mean, it's they just go together, right? And they say it as much towards the end a little heavy-handedly, but I just think so. I think it was important for them. This is a different stage of their relationship, and all of a sudden now they're not bound to the hip as master and apprentice. You know, they are actually having to bridge out in their own different ways and apply the things that they've learned from one another, and still have a bit of this connection in between. But the politics were a little bit interesting. I probably found them more interesting than you did, but I think there were some things that just were completely crazy to me, like why, what's his name, Kitar, why he was like basically the prosecutor. I don't understand that at all. That seems like a conflict of interest, but what do I know?
Neimoidian culture, those guys.
Yeah, and then the blurred line between the Neimoidians and the Trade Federation. It seems like that is still, Mike Chen tried to explain that and differentiate them. But I got to be honest, it was like crisscrossing the entire time. Like you still can't disassociate them from each other.
Right. And
as much as they kind of wanted to say that they were separate, they sure don't act like it. And this is still separate from Newt Gunray. I'm not throwing Newt Gunray's part of all of this into it, but just the Trade Federation and Neimoidians in general.
Yeah, I think they did a good job of painting Newt Gunray as like the bad guy. Like he's the fanatic and he's the exception. He does not speak for, on behalf of the rest of the world or population. I think he did a good job of explaining that. But I'm with you. Like there were times where it felt like the Neimoidians were like, it's like, why do you guys believe these guys? Like, and here's the other thing too about this. I will get to the good stuff too, though. I promise. But like, I can't stand the Neimoidians. Like there's nothing, like zero thing.
I really liked Rug. I thought Rug was a great character.
Okay. Yeah. I think she was a female, right?
Yes. She was the special ops Neimoidian. Yeah. Yeah.
She turned out to be pretty solid. And I love the fact that they went back for her at the very end and rescued her and all that. That's really cool stuff.
So that was the part that I was like, huh? Just kind of.
Yeah.
was a weird epilogue. Oh, Jonathan Davis, by the way, was the narrator.
Yes, that's it. Jonathan Davis. Yeah, he always does good
fantastic
stuff.
job. Yeah, always does a great job.
So yeah, like Neimoidians, like I just like, I don't really care. Like I could care less about Neimoidians. I hate their accents. I hate the way, and I couldn't get the stinking accent when I was reading this book the entire time. I read everything like Newt Gunray. Anytime anyone said anything, and it was driving me absolutely, bat. You know what? So
you should go listen to Jonathan Davis because he doesn't do that accent at all.
Oh, really? Okay, good.
They sound like kind of any other character, if you will.
Yeah.
Brooke has a bit of that gravelly type of voice to her, but I think it was much easier to palate than if you were to hear the episode 1 voices the entire time.
You know what? When as I was reading this thing too, it did feel like it was, and this is a compliment. Okay, it felt like it was a really long episode of the Clone Wars, or maybe that's probably not fair. If they were to do like a like another Clone Wars movie, a Clone Wars movie, animated movie that's set during this time, and they could easily have done this story. Like there were moments where, because like Clone Wars, there was moments where there was high action, there was comedy, you had all the elements that you wanted. And then sometimes in Clone Wars stuff, when it got into, for me personally, when it gets to the politics stuff, it would kind of bog down a little bit, and then it'd pick right back up again. But it did feel like it was a really long episode of the Clone Wars. And so I would say, the other question I have in here is like, who's this book for? Right. Yeah. I think if you're a fan of the Clone Wars, I mean, I don't see how you cannot read this book. Like this has everything you would want. I mean, you get great stuff on the relationship between Padme and Anakin. Like as much as I said, I wish they were together, I really enjoyed all of that. Like the fact that, it's when Padme says this is going to tear us apart, right? In Attack of the Clones, like them hiding their relationship. And then in this book, and then of course in Revenge of the Sith, you see them going to such great lengths to ensure that no one finds out, while at the same time, it does feel like it is putting a restraint on their relationship. And it's starting to fracture their relationship in some ways, because Anakin wants to just be out there and tell the world that, he wants to express everything with his heart, and he can't. And she's constant. She's the constant. She's constantly letting him know that, no, we can't. And we've got to be reserved. And, they go undercover at times. They have these really cute moments where they went and bought, like, what was it, sundaes or ice cream or whatever it was. And just having that one-on-one time. I really enjoyed those aspects of it. And sorry, this is where I felt like where I said I was going to say something good. Like the book, I was talking to Lauren about this earlier. The book has lots of great moments, like really good moments. Mm-hmm. But when all stitched together, I just felt like it was just a good book. It wasn't like incredible for me. But anyways, I've been going on. I got other stuff I can say, but what about you?
I mean, talk about some of the things I've enjoyed, some of the things I liked a little bit less were like the Obi-Wan, viewing the relationship between Anakin and Padme and getting a very clear idea of what is going on, and continue to putting off and delaying having that conversation with him. Now, granted, sometimes things get in the way, but it just seems like he keeps stopping short and just doesn't want to do it, or just doesn't do it. Maybe not want to is not the right way, but he just doesn't do it.
You mean confront them about the relationship?
Yeah, because I mean, he
sees
it pretty clearly early on, and then he finally admits it to himself. Like, yes, there is something happening here. I think he also feels that, there's something with him and Satine, and Satine is brought up in this book by Dex, actually, which is kind of funny because he gives, he ribs him pretty good. And, Obi-Wan admits to this too. Like if Anakin knew about this, he'd never hear the end of it.
Right.
Right. And Obi-Wan groans as much at his lack of maturity, as well as, just, how he got involved with all of that stuff. And he doesn't seem to regret a whole lot of it though. But yeah, I mean, but you some things like that drive me a little bit crazy of why Obi-Wan continues to put that, put some of that stuff off. But I think for like asking who is it for though, I think, if you want more Padme and Anakin, you get it, and do you get it the entire book? No, but do you get for a decent amount of it? Yes, absolutely. Yeah. For all the things you put out there. I think the other thing is, Anakin getting a Padawan in Ahsoka. If you wanted to see why they thought he was ready, this book is instrumental for that.
Yep.
With what he is with Mil Alabeth and how that goes, that was really good stuff to show the maturity of Anakin. Now, on the other side of that, I had a problem with some of that too, because it's almost like he goes from, we probably need to set the whole story up.
Yeah, I was going to say, before we've probably already gone too far, but why don't you do that real quick?
All right, yeah. So let's try to do a quick recap here. So this book takes place just the weeks after Geonosis. So we are not long after Attack of the Clones, right?
Yeah.
So Anakin has just been knighted Obi-Wan has been escalated into this temporary and rotating seat of the Jedi Council, which is another kind of interesting thing that they talked about with, who is it? Trebar Coleman? Is that the name?
Oh, yeah. The guy that,
the no name, you always give a whole lot of.
I think it's Django that kills him.
Yes. So again, as they get ready for their next assignments, which are going to be separate, Anakin is spending his last couple of meetings with Padme. It gives us a rare glimpse into their relationship dynamics, both the positives and the negatives, things that they're doing well with, things that they struggle with. They have some really sweet moments in there as well. But you also see Obi-Wan and Anakin starting to struggle a bit with their new roles and their relationship. And in Obi-Wan's case, it's actually been interesting to continue to feel whether he is worthy or not of the status that he's obtained within the context of Qui-Gon, but also as this, master. Like, how can someone so young feel like he should sit there in the council with like Yoda and all of them?
Mm-hmm.
So while this is happening, though, tragedy strikes Neimoidian capital of Cato Neimoidia, and Count Dooku comes on the air and implicates the Republic and challenges Palpatine himself to visit the planet and allay the concerns of the Neimoidian people and the government. Clearly, that can't happen. So Obi-Wan ends up volunteering to lead a solo mission to investigate the cause of it, to try to basically uncover the truth. You hear truth 5,000 times in this book, but that's the thing. So Obi-Wan calls on Dex to get some help to prepare about the Neimoidians, to get some of that, while Anakin is whisked away to pass on some of his wisdom to younglings, which I guess is almost like a rite of passage where they get inundated by children. It goes about as well as you can imagine it would go, but he does come across Mil Elabeth, who again is a youngling, a Zabrak youngling, who is very sensitive with emotion in the Force. And so this is why it speaks to Anakin very well, because they're just both very emotional people in that regard, but she's starting to withdraw from the Force. Now, what happens though is, so Obi-Wan agrees to basically go alone to Cato Neimoidia, but Anakin, of course, says, and he's not supposed to have contact with the council, no contact with anything, all for goodwill and good faith. And again, you hear that about 5,000 times in the book too. But of course, Anakin gives him a comlink because
what a maverick.
We have to have a reason for them to come together at some point, right?
Yeah, right.
Right. And so when Obi-Wan gets to Cato Neimoidia, he hooks up with a security officer named Rug Cornum, who is a former Special Forces, actually a pretty cool character. And so she actually allies herself with Obi-Wan in search for the truth, which is a bit of a disbelief for her partner and protege. So if you think about Obi-Wan and Anakin, Rug and Kitar Nor have that same kind of relationship. A young, brash, doesn't really think too well. Now, Dooku, of course, has sent Asajj Ventress, who quickly identifies Kitar as the weak link here, right? And we later find out he's got a ton of emotional baggage with the Republic, his people, the family, that the Neimoidians keep getting crapped on by the Republic, and so on and so forth. So, of course, he's easy pickings for Asajj, and she basically radicalizes him very, very quickly. So, of course, the Republic is implicated because Asajj Ventress is kind of doing some stuff on the side, and Obi-Wan finds this evidence, tries to get Anakin to help research some of this data, but the comm is discovered. Anakin knows that Obi-Wan's in trouble, so he ends up going to Cato Neimoidia. Kitar ends up planting numerous bombs all around the place and wanting to hit all of the art. So some of the things we got a lot of is the culture of Cato Neimoidia and the culture of the Neimoidian people, which Albert is giving a big thumbs down to. But while it was overstressed, I did like that it did bring a different level of appreciation to the Neimoidian people.
And I was doing that because I don't like the Neimoidians, but it makes complete sense, right? From a novel, like why he was going after it. It's not lost on me. So sorry.
Right. No, so Anakin brings Mil out there, of course, because she stows away, and R2 is with them. So they go and find them all. Of course, Obi-Wan is basically put on trial for hiding evidence, and because all this comes out, of course, things go downhill. He does give a fantastic speech, but he's found guilty like on the spot. When your court in arraignment is basically done in the grand.
It had a name. Yeah. Grand something.
Yeah. Like basically the grand something of judgment. I mean, it's really ominous.
Doesn't bode well for you. Yeah.
No, it doesn't. Yeah. And so things go really downhill really fast. He's found guilty. And then Asajj is starting to, I think, do things to the guards around them and killing them and so on. But no one knows that she's force sensitive, any of this. No one can see her lightsabers, nothing like that, except Kitar does eventually. But Anakin starts to insert himself. He attacks. Kitar eventually tracks them all down. He has gone completely crazy. Rug ends up incapacitating him, but she's going to get thrown into the brig and things like that as well. Oh, gosh, take a deep breath, Chris. Here we go. All right, so they beam the evidence to Padme, who eventually gets that to Coruscant. Rug stays behind to go ahead and field her judgment. We do get the first confrontation between Ventress and Anakin, which is kind of interesting.
It was a good fight.
Yeah, and kind of that was pretty much it. There are a few wrap up moments, like an epilogue with Rug, a little bit with Mill and Mill's future in the Order.
Mm-hmm.
With Yoda, and kind of an interesting situation there. But from a story aspect, I think that's all that happened. Did I miss anything critical?
No, I mean that's pretty much it. Here, the question, one of the things,
12 hours of an audiobook. You're welcome.
Was it 12 hours? Man, the book wasn't very long.
Something like that. 11 hours, something like that.
I'm gonna have maybe Jonathan Davis just as a slower
a little bit,
or vocalist. I don't know what you would call.
I mean, the Neimoidians speak a little bit slower in general, I think.
Yeah,
and then Asajj Ventress, of course, does. She has to be all sultry.
And of course, all this comes from that throwaway line in Revenge of the Sith about, that business on Cato Neimoidia or Cato Neimoidia doesn't count. And that was in the back of my mind the entire time I was reading this book. And to, I guess, the reference now that we have the backstory is that Anakin bailed him out. Like he went and saved him, rescued him. And Kenobi went.
Kind of.
Well, yeah, okay. That's fair.
I mean, we're going to get to that question at the end here.
Yeah. But Kenobi, really, I wouldn't say he botched this, but I mean, he was supposed to go there and negotiate.
But he gets rewarded at the end of it. That's the crazy part.
I mean, he does. Why didn't anybody, when things went south, where was everybody else coming in to help out? He was locked up and on trial and.
Well, so that was the thing. So that's kind of a good question because, at numerous times if Palpatine was to go to Cato Neimoidia, it was going to be one of these situations where he needed a full escort, a full, full battalion or platoon or whatever it is. Yeah. And basically it would have looked like an invasion. Right. In an occupation.
They would have militarized this and weaponized it in a way like that.
Exactly. And it basically would have brought, and again, Cato Neimoidia contend that they are neutral in all of this and that the Trade Federation is really neutral, which again, I think is kind of BS, but.
So does Padme.
So does Padme. Yeah. So they're all kind of neutral in all this. But they all kind of feel like maybe they can get that. But again, so any kind of military force by the Republic in particular, because they're the ones on their heels and they're the ones who have been potentially identified. Of course, both sides end up getting implicated at the end of it, but that's why they can't get too involved. And this is why Anakin is completely unsanctioned going in. Mace is pissed. I was surprised just how much Mace hates Anakin Skywalker.
It was, he did not hold anything back in describing how unsatisfied and disappointed Mace Windu was with Anakin at every turn, no matter what was happening.
There was no shortage of it, right? I mean, it was at least 3 or 4 times that it was brought up wow, this is just bad. Yep.
It's so funny too, because sometimes it just depends on the authors and who's ever making the content. There's some people out there that feel like, I know there's a lot of apologists and a lot of people that defend Mace Windu for who he is and how he acted, and I can see both sides. But in my book, he's an a-hole to Anakin and to a lot of other people. But I get that some people feel like no, you don't really what I've been told is you don't really understand Mace Windu, and that's fair. Maybe I don't, but I know what I know. Okay.
Enlighten me, I guess.
I know. It's just trolls on Twitter that I don't feed.
So how do you want to do this? You just want to kind of talk about some of the characters a little bit and maybe some of the interactions, relationships.
Yeah. That's fine. Let's start with Anakin. Cause, I thought this book did a really good job for him. There was we talked about the relationship. I think that was really great. Here's the thing too. Mike Chen, in my opinion, knows the characters. I never once read anything and felt like, wow, this is nothing Anakin would say or do, or Padme or Kenobi. He's got a really good foothold on who the character was. You can tell he loved the Clone Wars series and watched the Clone Wars series, right? So everything felt genuine. Everything felt authentic. So when I say that because there were things that he was introducing with Anakin that were just extensions of things that we already knew, right? His passion was for people, the way he always felt, the way he felt move his feelings. Later on, at the very, very end, when he's in defense of Mill, he's like putting his heart out there and saying, "Look, I know this person. I trust her. I trust her judgment." Going against what Yoda wanted, because at the end of the book, Mill is this younger Padawan who's like, "I don't want anything to do with the Force. Like, I hate this. Is too much. It's overwhelming. I can feel everybody's emotions." I think she described it as kind of like a radar or something, right? Like that's the way she sees it,
Right.
and it's overwhelming her. And through Anakin, she's able to kind of accept it, right? He tells her, just lean into it. You need to accept it and that sort of thing. But at the very end of the book, she's like, "I don't want anything to do with this. I don't want to be a Jedi Knight."
Well, I think she was okay with the Force, but yeah, she didn't want to do the Jedi thing because she was constantly at odds with why are we leading troops?
Oh yeah.
Why are we fighting? Yeah, it was really more the militaristic aspect of the Jedi, which Obi-Wan is struggling with as well.
Mm-hmm. But so she makes a comment about, "Hey, I want to, I don't want to do this anymore." And Yoda tells her, "You're still going to go through the trials." Which I was like, wait, that's kind of a jerk move, because he seemed fine with everybody leaving the Order in every other instance that we've already had him in. But I guess the way more I thought about it, I was okay. Well, maybe he's saying all the other people that he said, "That's fine, go ahead and leave if you want," they'd already gone through the trials, and maybe that was his point, right? You need to at least put your foot in there.
Right. She's a youngling. And so I think she's at this crossroads of where she's not sure. She doesn't want to go to Ilum. She doesn't want a lightsaber. She doesn't know that she fits in with what a Jedi is at this point.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think where I landed with Yoda and what he was doing and kind of being like, "Oh, okay, yeah, we'll talk about it. We'll talk about it." Right.
Right.
I think it was more of a
parent move.
Yeah, I think so. I think it was very much like that, of saying, "Okay, look, I hear what you're saying, and I accept how you feel, and listening and hearing all of that. But let's talk. There are different ways, and I want to make sure you understand different ways that you can be a Jedi, different ways that you can get fulfillment, and that also fulfill what you want to achieve and what you want to give back. Because it's clear that being a Jedi is important to Mill, but doing it in the right way. And she has a lot of conviction by the end of the book. She goes, like you were saying at the beginning, she was complete withdrawing. She was not wanting anything to do with it. She just felt all this pain. It was overwhelming.
Mm-hmm.
But through her time with Anakin, and by the end of it, she's like, I really want to help people. I feel the best whenever I'm helping people, and I feel like I'm giving back. And Yoda's perspective is, hey, you can do that. There are places where we need this, and people like you are just as important as people like Anakin, who are out there wielding lightsaber and cutting down battle droids.
Yeah. Yeah. And so to kind of bring it to back to Anakin Skywalker, the reason I mentioned that was because he was petitioning for, like, let her leave kind of thing. Right. I mean, he didn't have the wisdom, of course, and that Yoda had and all that, but he was really putting his heart out there and expressing it as a Jedi Knight. Like, it took a lot of courage, I think, for him to say that, because he's been so held in check as a Padawan, and this was no longer the case. Yeah, so I felt like there was.
I do disagree with you a little bit, though, about Anakin, that it was that Mike Chen absolutely knows the characters without question, not debating that at all. But Anakin at times seemed to be way more mature than
when we get to the Clone Wars.
Well, no, when I think about weeks after Geonosis, I mean, I think about it from the other perspective, like coming out of how his behaviors were coming out of Geonosis. And again, that was a potentially very transformational event, and some things happen, and they do recount some of the arguing between Anakin and Obi-Wan about Padme during that battle. But I think it was also it just seems like he got very mature at times that were more like Revenge of the Sith, or more well into the Clone Wars Anakin that we saw, than maybe earlier in that transition. So it just seemed like, I could see where we're kind of going back and forth, but it seemed like he leaned really heavily into that, that emotional maturity, which I don't know that I agree he was there with. It was there yet.
Well, and I would say I would agree too. Like, I don't think he has that at the beginning of the Clone Wars, like the animated series. Right. You could even argue that he's regressed, given where he's at the end of this with Mill and where he starts with Ahsoka, because he makes a comment about it, like, "Oh, I'm never getting a Padawan," kind of thing, and you're like, "Hi," it's a nice, cute little chuckle, because we're like, "Oh, you wait, buddy." But yeah, it felt like he did mature quite a bit there, and then to see him kind of go where he starts off, or where he starts off with Ahsoka, it does feel like he may have taken some steps back based on the characterization here, but yeah, I think it was all still in the same vein of Anakin's spirit and personality. What did you think about the Sun Dragon stuff?
I thought that was pretty cool. And actually, I think that was, and this is a story from his mother, and she would tell him both on, I like that she would tell the Sun Dragon story both as a kind of like, not a reward, but when things go well, but also when things go badly.
Yeah.
And it was the same story that you could garner multiple lessons from. And so I thought that was really cool. And I think it actually described him very well. This just bright, burning dragon. But I think what Mill said to him was even more powerful. You don't always have to be the Sun Dragon.
Yeah.
You don't have to be that, as Obi-Wan puts it later on. The thing that's dangerous about Anakin is passion.
Mm-hmm.
It's not that he has feelings and he's because those things do him really well, but it's that passion and it's this just unwavering warrior spirit within him. And he feels like he has to go out and save everybody. And he has to be the person. He has to do it all. If he doesn't do it, no one will. No one can. And because he's the only one that can try hard enough, he can do anything. And so I think when Mill said, you don't have to be that, it really shook him to the core. Now, I think he quickly put that out of sight, out of mind. But
yeah,
I thought it was a really interesting comment for her to say to him, for a youngling to say to a Jedi Knight. But overall, I really enjoyed that aspect of the story. I think that was a really good way of summarizing Anakin, especially from a youngling's perspective.
Yeah, and it comes up a few times. There's a lot of references, especially by the end of the book. There's many references to that story, the parallels between Anakin and itself. And I don't recall the exact details of the story. He tells it at one point. He tells it to Mill, I think.
Yeah.
And it's really good the way it reads.
What's interesting, he's never told Obi-Wan the story.
Yeah. Yeah,
Really,
he said there's only been a few people that he's told, and
that sounds like Mill and Padme probably.
Yeah, I think that was Obi-Wan Kenobi's suspicion, is that, okay, Padme probably has heard the story.
And I was like, okay, this is dangerous now.
Yeah, well, so on that note is passion for Anakin Skywalker. I think what this book does really well, too, is it establishes that Anakin needs Obi-Wan Kenobi, and Obi-Wan Kenobi needs Anakin, in the same way that I feel like Padme, well, I don't know that Padme needs Anakin, okay? But I feel Anakin absolutely needs Padme. Like, his passion is held in check by both of them in very different ways. At the very beginning of the book, when Mike Chen's talking about the relationship that exists between Anakin and Padme, he calls it passion tempered by calculated action, right? He's the passionate person. Padme is the calculated action person. Later on, when he's talking about Kenobi and Anakin, he calls it fire and ice. There was another one, a really good analogy: emotion and intellect, bravado and control.
Mm-hmm.
Right. And so there's a theme here, right? Kenobi and Padme are keeping Anakin in check. And when they're not around, that's when Palpatine comes in and feeds the passion. And there's a great moment in here too, with, not to kind of segue into Palpatine, but there is a moment in here where Palpatine gets some one-on-one time with him and is just running him through the manipulation mill, right? And feeding on that. And you can see where, for all the work that Kenobi and Padme are doing to help Anakin become better, he's just undoing it. And he's undoing it in like 10 minutes. Yeah.
In
10 minutes. Yeah. He's completely tearing down any progress that's been made to help keep his passion in check, which is really good. Like, I mean, that makes complete sense. And why, by the time we get to Revenge of the Sith, he's so detached from Kenobi. He's so detached from Padme. He's so obsessed now with his own feelings. And the only person that really is, behind him, cheering him on and telling him everything he needs to know for all the wrong reasons is Palpatine, which
and for context, he tells Palpatine, besides Padme, he tells Palpatine in this book what happened with the Raiders, with the Tusken Raiders, and with his mother.
Oh yeah, that was a great moment, like shocking.
But again, the reason why he told Palpatine was because he knew the answer he would get. He knew he would be supported.
Right.
He knew that he would understand. And so it was validation is what he was looking for and what he knew he would get. So it was very direct and, manipulative on Palpatine's part to tell him those things were okay. Anakin knew exactly what he was doing.
Yeah, because he's not going to get that from Kenobi or Padme.
Right.
Right.
He got compassion from Padme.
Sure. But she was still like in shock and in horror, and it's a horrible act. And he's like, nah, you did exactly what, anybody would have done. That's just who you are, and
It's
don't
like
be
what he
afraid
did.
of it.
It was a very similar conversation with Dooku. You know, he took your arm, you took his head.
Yep. Yep. And that sets up a little bit later too. We get the Jedi Military Integration Act in this book.
Yeah.
And this was kind of the antithesis of it, right? It was like the genesis of it, I should say.
Yeah.
He was kind of feeding. What he was doing is kind of setting that up. In fact, in that same scene, he's talking about how, his hands are tied. And I'm paraphrasing, but basically his hands are tied because right now all the he can make the decisions about where they go to war and that sort of thing. But logistically, that's still in the hands of the Jedi Council. By the end of this book, we get this military act which introduces armor into the Jedi ranks. So this is where we get to see the armor that they wear in the Clone Wars. It explains why they have the armor that they have in the Clone Wars series. And then it also tells us or explains how Palpatine has much more control and much more power over where the Jedi themselves go for deployments, and elevates like Padawans to the rank of generals, that sort of thing with the Ahsoka.
Commanders, for Padawans. But it was the
commanders.
But it was the integration of the Padawans into the military campaigns.
Right.
In general, which was, of course, a huge setup for Order 66.
Yes. And he says that in that little speech at the Anakin too. He's like, we don't know how long this war is going to go. That's BS. You do know how long this war is going to go because you're behind it all. So we've got to do the right thing. And the right thing is we've got to get the Padawans in early, right? It makes complete sense from this perspective, but it's all part of that grand plan.
To go back to Anakin, though, and the emotions, I think one thing that was interesting, though, was when we've talked about Anakin and with his mother, a lot of time that has a negative connotation with it. Now, Anakin spins that around a little bit and says that when he dwells on his mother, it's more of her supportiveness. And it was more of just the way that she made him feel accepted in comparison, in very stark contrast to basically the lectures that Obi-Wan gives.
Mm-hmm.
And that critical type of their relationship that always caused a lot of dissension and a lot of disruption between them and this dissonance, right?
Right.
And so it was interesting to hear his perspective of what we would assume it would be negative obsession with his mother, maybe be the wrong word, but that just reliance and that overwhelming need to have that. But it was really more of this calming effect, and you can have the image of from Attack of the Clones where he's standing and he's got his arms behind his back, shirtless and all that good stuff. But or no, he has a little tunic on. But anyway, because
they kind of reenact that. You're reading there,
well, they kind of reenact that moment in this book. So, but yeah, but again, it was an interesting, a bit of a dichotomy, a bit of a different spin than what we would normally have with Anakin and Shmi.
Yeah, and I think it explains that whole. When you hear like it's Obi-Wan's fault, he's holding me back, that whole thing, later on because of him, right? All that resentment that is starting to build up. This is where some of that is stemming from there. Okay, let's talk about Obi-Wan Kenobi because he's got a very interesting role here. He gets this is like his first real big, political mission. There's a lot on his shoulders, and he voluntarily takes this. Right, this isn't something that was appointed to him. When you think about it, there really weren't a lot of options. Someone was going to have to go. Someone was going to have to do this so that Palpatine didn't go and the battalion didn't go and didn't, look like a threatening act of some sort. So, but I did like the aspect of him kind of being the detective, and there was some really good like detective work that was going on, almost like a Batman kind of thing. At one point, he was with Asajj Ventress, and the way Asajj gets brought into this is Count Dooku's like, okay, look, Obi-Wan's right. Let's just you can send one of your Jedis. However,
I'm going to send an emissary just to make sure everything is in, on the up and up.
Yeah. Translation to sabotage everything. And that's where he sends Asajj Ventress. And so this is our first introduction to her, which I thought he did a really good job with writing her. She's of course, it's very early in her relationship, but he wrote her to a T. Like,
it was perfect.
Very consistent with, the Clone Wars series, very consistent with what we saw in
Christy Golden. Yeah.
Christy Golden's book. Yeah. So I did like a lot of the Asajj Ventress stuff in there.
And this is the first time that they've met, period. Yeah. And again, you still get a little of that flirtatiousness, not as much as what we got in Clone Wars, but you do have a little hint of it though. And she is very secretive in this book and very, like, no one knows who or what she really is.
Yeah. So yeah, he wears, I mean, he's got a lot of different roles here. And to kind of bring it back to what you said very early on about both of these guys are kind of in their new roles, right? You've got Anakin as a Jedi Knight. You've got Obi-Wan Kenobi as on the council. But they've also got these, what's that?
Ish.
On the council, temporary role. He gets permanent at the very end of this book. So these roles, they're almost living. They're both kind of living with these. They're already becoming legends, right? So there's some cool stuff in here where Anakin's talking about the Chosen One title and what it's like to live with that title and the expectations that come with that title and how it's used by some people as a jest, like in jest, right? Like, oh, the chosen one kind of thing. And then there's other people that firmly believe that he is, or at least are putting their faith in him. And so he's having to deal with that title, whereas Obi-Wan Kenobi, in a lot of regards, is doing the same thing. They're both kind of battling their own success here in a lot of different ways. Because now he's a mentor, he's a negotiator, he is an investigator. He's got to be, a head part of the council. He represents that. He's representing the entire Republic in some ways. And so the way he handles all that is pure Obi-Wan. Like, he does a really good job until he botches the whole mission, and of course, and gets arrested. But
I had a thought about that. So General Grievous, the negotiator. Do you think that
Right,
was?
yeah.
Do you think that was a dig at Obi-Wan for how poorly this ended up?
No, I know. Yeah, that's funny you say that. I didn't think about that, but it does certainly. That line now has a different context for me. So maybe it was. That'd be a good question for Mike Chen. But yeah, I like that. The negotiator. Yeah, right.
But I think it is interesting though, because we do still see Obi-Wan as young, right? And again, that uncertainty, and he completely misjudges the situation with the Neimoidians. He wants to present everything as pure. Here are the facts.
Right.
I'm going to give you the facts. The facts are going to, they will set you free, type of thing.
Mm-hmm.
But
And
the problem
Dex warns
is,
him of that though too.
yeah, Dex does warn him of that. You have context. You have all of these other things with them, and the Neimoidians are tired of being, positioned as risk calculations. They're pre-wired for all of that, and they do acknowledge that. There's a whole different side of them. And the thing that he miscalculates is all of the emotion and the absolute grief that is going on with all of it. And of course, what's the next thing you always equate with those is anger, right? When you go through the cycle of emotions and the cycle of grief. And they just want someone to blame. They want, and they're not going to listen to reason if there is something in front of you. And this is what Dooku and Ventress know. As soon as they put that seed of doubt, which was from Dave from minute one, when they came out first to say something about and condemn the attacks and say it wasn't us, and to basically suggest it was the Republic. I mean, the Republic kind of already lost the fight at that point. I mean, you kind of feel like this the entire way, is that they're always behind the eight ball, trying to prove that they're innocent rather than they're trying to prove who the actual guilty party might be.
Yep. They're so going in, just kind of segue now into their relationship, Anakin and Obi-Wan. Again, I said it was kind of a slight, and I still feel that way. I mean, it was unfortunate we didn't get them until the very end. However, when they do finally get together, it's really good stuff. You get to see Anakin in his prime. He's saving Obi-Wan Kenobi. They work really well together. And that starts to build this case of like, they absolutely need each other, right? They cannot, they need each other for a lot of different reasons. But when they are together, there's just a magic that happens, and it's kind of, rubber stamped, or there's a bow put on that at the very end when they go and they rescue.
Oh, it was so over the top.
It was like, I mean, they were, the way he described it,
and the way that they,
it was parts flying, and then once they opened fire, once the droids realized that they were getting just hammered from behind, they turned around, started opening fire. Then suddenly it was just a splash array of blaster bolts being reflected, and so it was over the top. But they're the heroes, right? You would expect that. I mean, they did the same thing in Clone Wars, but yeah, their relationship in this book, it was interesting because Obi-Wan Kenobi was constantly having to remind himself, okay, he's not a Padawan anymore, right? He's not my apprentice. He is
breaking old habits. Yeah.
A Jedi Knight, right? He was having to check himself and learning to trust Anakin Skywalker more. And we see a lot of this continue on in the Clone Wars, right? There's times when Obi-Wan can easily get on his high horse, as he does, right? But then there's times when he does show him the respect that's rightfully due to him.
He really is trying. Yeah, he really is trying.
For sure. But the one thing that about the relationship that kind of, I felt like, I've always thought about it, but I think Mike Chen really just made me, I don't know. He gave me some emotions here at the very end of the book when he's talking about the brotherhood aspect, to bring it back to the title. Like, I never really thought about it. I mean, I know, and trust me, I get it. Kenobi says, you were my brother, that sort of thing. But the one thing that this book does a really good job of reminding you is that they both had Qui-Gon Jinn as their master. Yeah. And they both look at Qui-Gon Jinn almost as a father figure. And from that regard, you think of Anakin Skywalker and Obi-Wan Kenobi, your brothers, their dad being Obi-Wan Kenobi. He just does a really good job of kind of, I don't know, maybe reinforcing that relationship or fleshing it out or making it or solidifying it in some way. But it was cauterized for me with the ending of this book, especially when there's some really good passages there at the very end. Like, I can't, excuse me, I can't talk enough about the last third of this book, probably the last fourth of the book. Some really, really good stuff. There's an entire chapter. I'm looking at my notes. It says chapter 34. Wow. I don't even remember what the hell happened in chapter 34, but go read chapter 34 because the only thing I wrote on there was wow. And I remember reading that thinking it was a really good chapter. So anyways, your thoughts, I guess, on their relationship together now.
Yeah. I mean, it's just, I like that everything is so complimentary for them and they both recognize it. I think that's the really cool thing is that they both recognize it. And by the end of the book, they do both realize it is so. And then just their banter and the way that, when Anakin and Padme make fun of Obi-Wan's hair. At least they didn't make fun of the beard.
His fake beard.
To the point where he cuts the hair at the end of this book. But
I mean, they even explained the part in his hair that he has in the Clone Wars.
Right.
He went that far.
They went that far, right? This is, good thing this wasn't Solo, a Star Wars story.
Right. Yeah, exactly.
But it's nice that you get this complementary aspect of the relationship, which we always knew. But at this transitional moment in their lives and in their relationship, I think it's all the more important for them to understand that and to really lean into those strengths as a pairing of what they are, and that they really do both believe and feel that they are stronger together. And I mean, some of the words that Mike Chen used are almost sad, right? They could never, that bond could never be broken. They always needed each other. And again, it's one of those things that when you lose that part of you, that thing that keeps you in check, if you've lost Padme, you've lost Obi-Wan. Mm-hmm. I mean, who knows what way? I mean, we know exactly where Anakin spirals into, but
Palp's going, I'm here for you, buddy. Come back. Come to daddy.
Right.
I got you.
But yeah, but I think Mike Chen really did a great job with it. And I do like that they brought it back to Qui-Gon Jinn, in so many different ways, and they both have this different perspective of Qui-Gon.
That's true.
And some of it's guilt for both of them too, right? Anakin, we saw this in some of the comics too, where Anakin's like, I was just kind of dumped on you, basically. But Obi-Wan even says to him, Qui-Gon, we'd be really proud of you. And you've really, you've exceeded everything that he would have expected from you. It was a really kind of heart-touching moment. It was very simple, but things like that, Anakin needs that affirmation in order to feel like he's actually, living up to the expectations that are set for him, even if he kind of laughs them off sometimes.
Yeah. And it's more about like it on that note, I felt like there were moments in it too where you realize that Anakin is trying to live up to how Qui-Gon Jinn felt about him. Not necessarily or specifically the chosen one title, right? He just wants to do good in the eyes of Obi-Wan, do good in the eyes of the council, do good in the eyes of Qui-Gon Jinn. And then at the end of the day, really, it's also about, making his mom proud and everything that she sacrificed too. So yeah.
And I had a thought, when, I don't know why I equated this in Force Awakens, when Rey yells out to Kylo Ren, or maybe it was Last Jedi, whenever it was, and you will never be as strong as Darth Vader. In my head, I always had this thing of where Anakin would yell at Obi-Wan that, you will never be as good of a teacher as Qui-Gon Jinn.
Yeesh.
I mean, some of that might be even Obi-Wan thinking that type of thing, that he's just not good enough, and he's always falling short, and he has to be harder on him because he feels like he's not done a good enough job in some way. So anyway, it was just, I don't know why it popped in my head, that comparison and that kind of correlation, but I thought it was interesting to share.
Yeah. And that's...
You be the judge if it was interesting to share.
Well, no, I think it is, because I think you take Star Wars out of it. And as parents, right? We're trying to live up to whatever it is, our own ideals, our own values. Maybe we're trying to be more like our parents, or maybe we're trying to be less like our parents, right? And I think when you have kids under your instruction, whether it's rearing them as your own children, students, whatever it is, it is real. I mean, that kind of sits in the back of your mind. And conversely, like you said, the kids have expectations, right? They're looking at the times at you about, you're not living up to the expectations of how, think about a family that's separated. Dad does this, but mom doesn't, or mom always does this, but you don't. And you're better than, or you're never going to be as good as mom because you don't do the things that she does, or that sort of thing, or the grandparents, or my teacher, whoever it is. So I think that's real. I mean, I think that's just a natural thing in life. And I would expect that those, even though we've never seen them, in print, on screen, if now that we know as much as we do about that relationship and how real and how integral it was for both of them, I think you're right. I mean, I think there were moments when that probably did happen. They probably had those real conversations in the heat of things, especially from Anakin's side, given how much passion he is and how much he speaks with his heart. So
it was important for us to see the pressures on Obi-Wan too, even if it's the pressures he put on himself, even if being a temporary member of the council, and then also seeing Anakin and Anakin being a reflection of him in that way, but also, well, I mean, yeah. So however Anakin behaves is a reflection of him, and he's responsible for, even as a Jedi Knight, even though people are telling him, hey, he makes his own decisions now, but still as that young member and still not sure you belong.
Yeah.
Obi-Wan is experiencing a lot of similar things that Anakin experiences in that regard about, I've got all these people around me that have all these do they really have all these expectations? What do they really think? Am I okay to speak up? Did I say the wrong thing? Is this the right time? I mean, they're both in this new stage of their lives. And so it was really interesting to hear, to feel that uncertainty from both of their angles.
Yep. Okay, let's, in the last couple minutes we got here, let's talk about some of the newer characters just quickly. Was it Rug or Rug? Rug?
Yeah, Rug Cornum. Yeah.
Okay. I was saying Rug at first, and then I was like, wait, no, there's two U's. So I figured it'd be Rug. Okay. So Rug, yeah, interesting character. I really liked her a lot. Like, she grew on me. I didn't like her at first, and I think that was the whole point, right? You had your suspicions about who she was, that sort of thing. She got it. Like, she definitely understood. She seemed very well grounded. It's unfortunate though, because of, where she is at the end of the book. She's considered a traitor because she was siding with Obi-Wan Kenobi and siding with the Republic, that sort of thing. And of course they liberate her and free her at the very end, which is, we've already talked about. But I like her and Mill. Like, I guess the question is, do you think we'll see any more of them, and where would that even be at this point?
It's a good question. Maybe Rug and Shriv end up finding each other later in life. I don't know how old. Like a Neimoidian and a Duro. I don't know.
So there's this Neimoidian and this Duros when they walk into a bar. Yeah, I don't know. I don't even know how long they live for, or if that would be an odd couple in some ways. But I mean, this is one of those characters that I just was like, okay, yeah, this is kind of cool. I'd like to see more of her, but I don't know where realistically that would happen at this point. So
yeah, I don't either. I mean, she's kind of a soldier, right? Former commando, questioned authority way too many times, so she's been demoted out of those roles, even though she was basically special ops. She was doing all the dirty work, assassinations, and just anything, good and bad guys, even children. It didn't matter. She had targets, so she's got red on her ledger, so to speak, if you want to go that route. But she wasn't going to. It added some complexity to it, but again, it was more this, shadow, or this mirroring of Obi-Wan and Anakin with Rug and Kitar, and to give Obi-Wan a bit of an ally, and again, to affirm this idea of trust between people, and trust goes both ways. And when trust breaks down, bad things can happen, and things that you don't intend to, even if your intentions are pure, it still happens. So again, it was not, I don't know that she was super deep as a character. I thought she was really interesting, and I liked the character. There's a bit of a grounding, like there is a single Neimoidian that is capable of trying. Well, she can feel all the things, but at the same time, she's like, okay, but no, we really do need to understand what's going on here, because if we don't find out the real truth and the underlying situation, it will go poorly. And so she had that perspective as well from Obi-Wan of being able to disassociate a little bit, and then in comparison with the wildly passionate Kitar.
Yeah. You said all that, and I thought, well, she's still a Neimoidian, so never mind. I don't like her. I don't want to see more about her. Speaking of not seeing more of anybody, it's Kitar? Now Kitar. I like the character more because of a Kitar. It reminds me of like the 80s Kitars, but that's I just said Qatar. I kept saying Qatar Nor, but either way, it's worth mentioning him because he's a patsy. He was manipulated the entire time. He was radicalized by Asajj Ventress. I think he was really kind of a pawn for her to manipulate. And I think she did a really good job. And I love how she kept playing into the doubt that he had and how things, everything that we've heard from Dooku, right, about how you can't trust the Jedi Order was being echoed through Asajj Ventress, and she was feeding it directly into the ear of this guy and radicalized in him and manipulated him for her own gain, which I thought worked really well. Aside from that, I don't know, whatever. I don't really care about him. Did he die? I don't even remember what happened to this guy.
Yeah, he was arrested, basically.
Oh, that's right. Yeah, he had the bombs, and they just arrested him. Yeah.
Yeah, it was very stereotypical as far as the radicalization, but I suppose maybe that's how it really does happen in a very stereotypical way.
What happened to me?
He was basically at like a crossroads of, he knew that bombing and things like that were completely wrong, and Ventress kind of took a chance because she knew this was that tipping point.
Mm-hmm.
But if you got to go all in, you have to push this envelope, even though it's not real. You have to convince everyone now that the Republic is at fault. And again, it's the optics of everything. They talk about optics throughout this book.
Yeah.
And it's very true. Optics are everything. If you can't control the narrative, you've lost the war effectively. And it's just an unfortunate reality of it all. But again, it was, he was so far radicalized, and then he was a prosecutor. And again, I don't understand how that's okay and why that would be that part. It just struggled. It lost me there of why he would be that person. I get why. He has a story behind him with his family and how his family were treated. Neimoidians were finally invited down to the core worlds with art, but all of these things happened, and the Republic doesn't really care, so on and so forth. So it was a really meaningful backstory to it, and there was a lot of passion and a lot of emotion behind all of it, but it just unfortunately just completely disconnected with how crazy he ended up being about all of this stuff. And at the end of the day, it just kind of took me out of that character a little bit. But if you need a person who's a pure bad guy, but not a pure bad guy, this is kind of your character, right? You'll eventually get through to him enough to disable him and save the day. And that's basically what happened.
Mm-hmm. Well, you put way more thought into him than I did, because I have Neimoidian. Bleh. That's what it says in my notes.
That was the extent of your analysis on Kitar.
That was the extent of my analysis. He was just there. Whatever. I could care less. Okay, Dex. Let's talk about Dex, because I know there are a lot of Dex fans out there. I think he comes back. I think it's at the very beginning of the book, but then later on, I think was it Anakin reaches out to him. I thought behind the scenes, behind the scenes kind of stuff. But I thought he did a good job with him, and it was cool to get more on his background and how he was an information dealer and we don't know when. And I started thinking about that. I'm like, he makes a Valo reference at the very end of this book, which did not get by me, by the way, from the High Republic. But I'm trying to think, like, how old was Dex, and is there any chance we would see him like not like right now, 2 or 3? I don't know how long they live. I need to go look that up, but. If there's an opportunity in maybe the Alkalite or whatever, right, to see, he's still that arms person and introduce him there, that'd be really cool, because it sounded like he had a really cool gig for before he, lost his pants and started working at a diner.
It sounded like that was a choice, actually. That was his retirement.
His retirement.
I do like Anakin's responsible. Dex, you mean the guy that owns a diner?
Yeah, right. Like he's not informed of just, where they got all the information in the Attack of the Clones at the very beginning.
Yeah, but it was cool getting him a little more screen time, if you will.
Yeah. No, he did a good job with him. Quinlan Voss's name is dropped in there at the very beginning. Did you catch that?
Yeah, briefly.
Yeah, briefly. I mean, they just mentioned that he was looking around. He saw Quinlan Voss, but I just thought it was interesting that they had Quinlan Voss. They had Ventress.
And again, he lit up when he saw it. It was really cool.
Yeah. Yep. So that stayed consistent. What is this? Review of the Neimoidian people by the galaxy wrongdoing. Oh, that's what we talked about earlier.
Yeah, we talked about that one. What about there was a female clone named Sister. What do you think about that? There was Omega's not the first.
I know.
How do you feel about this?
I don't even know what to think because I had to go back and read that.
I think I texted you. I'm like, a female clone? And you didn't respond.
Well, I probably had a lot going on, but nothing personal.
I took it personally.
I know you did. You're sensitive. So when I read that at least 3 or 4 times, like, because I'm like, what? How?
It scrambled my noodle, man.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know how to think about it.
I don't know what to make of it.
I mean, I love the idea, but now it's like, it's one of those things. It's like, holy crap, I need to know more. Like, where is that novel? Or where's the background on that? And
yeah, how many? Is that an anomaly? Is that intentional? What does that mean for Omega? Does that diminish Omega? I mean, I think I came up with like 15 questions about a character with one line in this book,
And you hear, like, we got to get Mike Chen on we got to do an interview with him because I want to ask him, like, did you sneak that in and like prayed and that they wouldn't see it or did they see it and go, yeah, no, it's fine kind of thing? Because it feels like that implies a lot of things.
I mean, it really does. I mean, and if anything, from a from a Kaminoan perspective, wouldn't that be considered a flaw?
Yeah, I mean,
in a reject, like a bad batch, so to speak.
Batch. Yeah.
Whoa! I just poked myself in the eye. God.
Which, by the way, is not coming out when we talked about it. Did you see that? Yeah, I get. Well, we said it wasn't going to come out in the 28th of whatever September or whatever.
Oh yeah, sure.
So it has officially now been pushed back. But anyways, but yeah, no, you're right. Like, from their perspective, like, that's not what they were creating. Was it an experiment? Like, is it, what was it, 99? Was it him? Something like that? Or what if she was a Bad Batch member? I don't know. Maybe she was the original Bad Batch member. I have no idea. There's all kinds of
But it seemed like there was nothing necessarily unique about her, though, either.
Mm-hmm.
But again, it was just, that there was for lack of a better word, a defective clone, at least from what we see as the norm of what we have seen so far as the norm for clone troopers, which have largely been male.
Well, only male, not largely. I mean, with the exception
not
of
including
2.
Omega.
Yeah. They've all been male, so.
Yeah, but that just really, that threw me for a loop.
Mm-hmm.
And I still don't, I'm going to lose sleep over tonight. I don't know what to think about it.
I see D. Bradley Baker do a feminine sounding
right.
accent.
Yeah, does D. Bradley Baker have to do the female voices as well? Or is it all Michelle Long?
No, I think, that's true. They would get Michelle Long to do it. No, I'd like to see D. Bradley Baker do it. So, all right. Well, I'm trying to think if there's anything. I think I had some other stuff in here. Just a little quick, like, things that I enjoyed about. I talked about the Valo one. There was a moment there where hold on. So here's where, like, I felt like, okay, Mike Chen, knock it off. No one cares. He goes in defense of, like, sand.
Oh, yes.
In a number of parts in this book. Like,
well, no, he confirms how bad sand is.
But why? I just didn't like, I didn't like, and I'm kind of slightly joking here, but like, it was stuff I didn't need. And it's almost like he was trying to defend that line of sand gets everywhere. Like, it was justification why Anakin would say that. And I don't know that we needed it. I was laughing the entire time because I couldn't tell if Mike Chen was being serious, because Anakin was having these, like, existential conversations with himself about sand and, like, how it gets in everywhere. And I told people that it gets I think at one point he even says something to that extent, like, I told everybody that it gets everywhere, and they all laughed at me. But yeah. And then he's like, I got it in my new arm. I need an oil bath. That's the only way I'm going to be able to get that out. It was just too much.
Say you need an oil bath.
He said that, not an oil bath, but he did say something like he's going to have to, like, dip it in some oil or something. But I'm thinking,
do something to get it off.
I'm envisioning him coming down, like, oh, thank the maker, like 3PO, like going down into the oil bath. So it was just funny to me. And I don't know if it was supposed to be, but I laughed at every mention of sand.
I think it was supposed to be humor, a little tongue in cheek.
Okay. I'll take that, because that's how it certainly read. Maybe last question for me, and I'm kind of going way backwards here, but the point of view chapters, like this. The interesting thing about this book is that every chapter is from the point of view of a certain character. So
Right.
predominantly Obi-Wan Kenobi and Anakin Skywalker. There was some mill chapters in there. There was some I already forgot her name.
Yeah, Rogue.
Rogue chapters in there. There was one for Asajj Ventress, which was really good. That might have been chapter 34 now that I say that. But what do you think about that? I thought it was interesting. Like, it's very different than we've had from a lot of Star Wars books here.
I like it. I think it sets you in that frame of mind that you were seeing things from their perspective. And I think it made it, I mean, it was subtle, right? Because it's like, okay, well, Obi-Wan Kenobi, well, now I switched and I've got my mind in of where I'm at, who I'm thinking, what that situation is going to be, and so on and so forth. And to me, it just kind of worked. I mean, think about it. If you had those chapters without the person's name just being listed on it, that would be very disjointing trying to jump back and forth and then to move back around. And I like this idea of doing that and getting everyone's perspectives within it. And I think it also helps you with Obi-Wan and Anakin being so far apart.
Yeah.
That you really do feel both sides. So it's not necessarily, it's sort of a third person telling of the story, but it's like a third person who's got the tape recorder kind of like right around, the person speaking. And so it's like a firsthand account of everything going on.
Yeah.
So I really like that. I thought it worked really well. And again, even with characters like Rogue, it gives you a moment with that character to understand what's going on and from their perspective at the very least too. And so I think it works. I liked it. I
did too. I think it worked well. It added some, I want to say mystique. I don't know if that's the right word or not, but there's a mystery that's trying to get solved here. Right. And when you get these different perspectives, it kind of messes with you trying to put together the story itself, or trying to put together all the pieces yourself, right? Because you're getting different perspectives, and by the end of it, it's pretty clear as to what happened. But I think it did a good job in helping the narrative and the type of book in this type of story that he was trying to tell. So I did enjoy it, even though I didn't at first. That's why I put it in my show notes. I did not like it, Sam. I liked it probably about midway through the book. Once he got to Cato Neimoidia and he was kind of going through and doing the investigation, that's when I was like, oh, okay, no, this actually is kind of working out pretty well for me. So I did enjoy it at the end. So.
Okay, so switching gears a little bit, again, things that we kind of glazed over or missed. What did you think about the Satine references and the Satine speech, and like how did all that strike you with Obi-Wan there?
Yeah, I was going to mention it earlier because you touched on my thoughts on that. And not to take anything away from Satine or what Mike Chen was trying to do, I just felt like it was a way for Obi-Wan to be suspicious and feel like he probably should say something because of, he was seeing all the signs between Anakin and Padme. Like it was clear something was going on there. He had his suspicions. He was this close to just going in and say, this needs to stop, or what's going on? You guys have gone too far. There was one moment there where I think where he was watching her, like he was way up on, I forget where he was, like on a balcony or something. He was looking down and watching them, and he could see the intimacy that was happening between them and how, they were both like looking around, right? She was much more tactful than
his
braid. Exactly. Yeah. All that stuff was going on. He's like, whoa, this is crazy. But then because he put the Satine stuff in there, I felt like that was the counter to why Obi-Wan didn't do that.
Right.
Like, I can, as Obi-Wan, I'm saying this, I can see why. And maybe it's not as dreadful or as horrible as I'm thinking it could possibly be. Or, I'm a hypocrite if I go out there and say this because I know I've got those same kind of feelings with her. To me, that's how I read it. Like it was just that counterpoint for him. So he wouldn't do that. But beyond that, probably nothing more.
It frustrates me so much.
I know it does.
Satine,
I know. Take a deep breath, buddy. Take a deep breath.
Well, because, with Obi-Wan, gosh, I don't even know what to make of it. If Obi-Wan was just more transparent with Anakin and more open with Anakin, it's a really interesting question to see what their relationship would have been like, and could have things ended a little bit not so disastrous with limbs and Death Stars and everything else.
Could arms have been saved? I don't know. Right. Maybe.
Could he not have, looked like Deadpool after he was done?
Yeah.
But it was just one of those things of like, if he would have just told him about Satine and the choices that he ended up making, and how these are the reason why he made this choice. And he had a choice that he could make. They had talked about running away, and it was very similar to Anakin's relationship with Padme, although both Obi-Wan and Satine were a lot more mature in their decision making, and both they both knew what they wanted to be and what they wanted to do, even if they had moments of doubt. Padme is very much like that, right? She knows what her responsibility is, and she enjoys helping people. And where Anakin just wants to help people and it kind of just wants to do what he wants to do, as long as it's in the service of some of that. So it just continues to kind of turn the knife a little bit of saying, okay, well, if Obi-Wan would just open his mouth for 5 minutes and talk about Satine, like what were the potential ramifications of in a positive way of what that might have looked like with his relationship with Anakin? And he talked about being more open and just willing to have a more open conversation and further that bond between them. It just seems like it was a huge opportunity missed.
Well, and I think if you think about the High Republic, right? Like, I can totally see two characters in that era having this conversation, like openly having this conversation, and even saying, pulling a Palpatine, like, no, it's okay to feel that way, right? You just can't.
Yeah, like
you can't.
Cantum Psi, yeah, with Comac, yeah,
with Comac, right? Exactly. Yeah. So maybe it does, and I don't know. This is a thought that I'm putting together literally on the fly here. So maybe it does speak to how Obi-Wan was brought up, right? Again, the events of whatever happened in the High Republic, which we've not gotten into, that led the Jedi Order to be so dogmatic and be anti-relationship, be anti-attachment, right? It's starting to me, in my headcanon, it feels like the events of the High Republic are what led the Jedi here. And Obi-Wan is cut from that cloth. He's not the old Republic or the High Republic type cloth. Yes, he's got some Qui-Gon Jinn in him, through at least as far as instruction goes, so he can kind of think outside the box. But by and large, he's always been by the book. He seems very, these are the rules and we can't break these rules. And whether they, and I think that's what fed into his relationship with Satine, right? Because Obi-Wan wasn't like, hey, I'm going to fall in love with you. We're going to consummate this relationship, and I'm going to stay in the Jedi Order. I think that was Anakin's idea, right? He was saying, I would have left the Order. Like it's a direct conflict of interest for me to stay. He said I would have left, like when he's holding her and she's dying. He says I would have left the Order for you, because I think he realizes he still can't. He knows that he can't have both. Where Anakin is completely coming at this from a different perspective of like, no, why can't I have both? Why can't I be on the Jedi? Why can't I be the most powerful Jedi, sit on the Order, given the master title, and you can still be a senator, and we can still have kids and have a relationship that's out in the open? He wants all those things, right? So where's I going? Oh, so going back to the events of the High Republic, I don't know that Kenobi will ever have it. No, he doesn't. I mean, he never does, but I just don't know that he would ever have it in him to look at that relationship and be okay with it. Like he's never going to be okay with it, and because he can't be okay with it, he can't come out and tell Anakin, "I feel the same way," or "I know exactly what you're going through." It's just he's not wired that way. If that makes sense.
Yeah, no, I get it.
I don't know. I'm sorry, man. If you need a moment, we'll take it and we'll just edit it out. Okay.
All right. Okay. All right. So final thoughts here. And this is the question everybody wants to know is and get the answer for. So did that business on Cato Neimoidia count as Anakin saving Obi-Wan?
No. Thanks, everybody. We'll see you guys next week the
answer should be no. I mean, it should be no. I agree with you. Because Anakin stuck his nose in there. Obi-Wan had a plan. He said as much.
Well, that plan went to hell. I mean,
but it was happening. He had the lightsaber going towards him. I don't know how he was going to get out of all this, but
this is a very Mjolnir moment in Thor, which I loved, by the way. I wondered that as a kid. Anyways, hey, good night, Rob. Rob's like, I'm out of here. Does it count? No, it doesn't count. Did he save Obi-Wan Kenobi? Because that's what it was, right? He's like, what was that? They were talking about owing each other, right? It's like, that's 2
years. Yeah, it was like the 10th time, and he was like, no, it's only 9.
Yeah. That stuff on Cato Neimoidia didn't count. I think it does count. I think Obi-Wan's just, in jest saying that it didn't count when he knows it really did count because, I mean, he was in jail. Like, and again, you could argue, yes, he was probably going to get out of it, but that thing went horribly wrong. Like, and not really to any fault of his own. Maybe. But yeah, I mean, without Anakin, he would have been screwed. Like and from the very beginning.
But it was Anakin's fault he was in that position in the first place as well.
No, it's
well, kind of the whole communicator.
Well, I know. I mean,
granted, I mean, there was, I mean, you can see why they debate it though, right?
Yes.
Because there are arguments for and against.
Right. Because if you think about it, right. And he should not have ever said, "Oh, sure, I'd love to have this communicator that no one's ever going to find that Asajj Ventress finds and calls him out on." Had he never done that, then fair. But Anakin being Anakin, right? He's not gonna. He wasn't gonna. That wasn't gonna happen. So
right, yeah. But would Obi-Wan have gotten off the planet? That seems like it would be much more difficult without Anakin and Mil.
Yes. It's hard to say because he's very resourceful, Obi-Wan Kenobi being very resourceful. So
true. Of course, he used that about Anakin too.
That's true.
Anakin just makes things happen somehow.
But I think in my mind, I think it does count. And I think he's just joking around with him, even though he knows in all reality, it does count.
All right. Well, I'm going to be on Team Kenobi here and say, no, it does not.
Okay. That's fine. I'll go with Team Anakin. There you go. No consensus tonight, folks. Sorry.
Well, it's much like most nights.
Yep. Okay. Overall, though, good book. I would say if you are a huge fan of the Clone Wars, definitely pick this book up. I think if you are a fan of Neimoidians, definitely pick this book up. I don't know who those people are. I'm sorry if you are one of those people. But yeah,
if you're a fan in this era and you want more Anakin and Padme, if you do want to get a little more depth into Obi-Wan and Anakin's relationship, if you're a little more curious about why they thought Anakin was ready for, to be a master, there's a lot of good stuff in there. If you're curious about Asajj Ventress and how she first met Obi-Wan, I think that there's stuff there for you too. I think there's a lot of good stuff in this book, and I think there was a lot of layers that you could go through this book, and I think it's worth picking up. I mean, I'd put this like 7.5 out of 10, something like that.
Okay. Yeah, I'd put it there, 7.5. That's a good number for me. Maybe 8, depending on the like there were certain passages. Like I said, there's certain parts of this book for me that were like 10s. Chapter 34, apparently.
Apparently, yeah.
Don't remember what happened there, but then there were other parts that were kind of like I don't know. I could have just went on too long, or the politics piece of it. And that's really at the end of the day what it came down to. It's just like as cool as that whole him on defense and that trial thing. I was like, I mean, I fell asleep, I don't know, so many times. I just wasn't, it was a good speech. And I get the moment, and it was a critical moment, but I don't know, just not my Star Wars.
It was foolhardy though too, which I liked too. I was like, oh my god, that's
Kenobi, yeah.
He's embarrassing himself with how. But yeah, I'll go with you. We'll round up. Yeah, we'll round up. This is why we don't rate things, because we're like.
I think 8. I think it's solid.
I think 8. Yeah, I think it's really solid. And again, quick read.
So good job, Mike Jen. Give him another book too. Okay. Rob's already left, so I don't know what we're still doing here. You got anything else?
Yeah, let's do some shout outs. How about that? So for those listening, we also do a live stream. And actually, we're getting really close to 1,000 subscribers on YouTube. So if you are curious about what we look like and do on this thing, and you're just listening, I guess, check us out over there on YouTube. We're under the Cantina Cast, of course. And give us a subscribe if you wouldn't mind. That would be really cool. And we'll see what we can do when we get to 1,000 subscribers. We'll figure something out. I don't know what. Anyway, but tonight, on live stream chatting, we had Jonathan, Steph, Sky, Eugene, Jorge, Vader's Girl. Good to see you again. Richard, Leland, Justin McFowey, and Rob. Anybody else in the background, thank you guys so much for coming out. We certainly appreciate it. And once again, thank you to all of our wonderful Patreon members. This week on Thursday, we are going to do Light and Magic, just kind of an overview of that series. What do you want to talk about with Light and Magic? Anyway, we kind of just decided this today of like, hey, what should we do for Patreon this week?
So this will be a thorough analysis of. No, I think there were moments of Light and Magic that I wasn't aware of, like things that were happening that were maybe confirmations more than anything else. And that's kind of what I want to touch on.
I really like that evolution from like when computer generated stuff started coming into it.
Yeah.
And that really tough time there with like Phil Tippett and stuff. Yeah.
Exactly. And those guys were just pioneers in front, out there, putting themselves out there for the sake of the tech and for the sake of, knowing that they weren't doing this to make, and Lucas said the same thing. Like he didn't set out to make the greatest movie ever.
Yeah.
Yeah. He knew well what he was doing. He was trying to be at the forefront of a brand new tech and tell the story that he wanted to tell, good or bad, right? When we got to Phantom Menace. And the technology that went behind that was what allowed him to do so. So, things like that. I don't know that it would be that eye-opening or anything, but it should be a good talk, especially if you've had a chance to watch it. There's some really good stuff in there from like just some of the discussions and that sort of thing.
Absolutely should. Yeah. And it's newer interviews with George Lucas too, which I think is really cool to get his recent takes on things, and where it all went, what they were trying to accomplish, and so much great behind the scenes footage, way more than I had ever seen. So anyway, that's your homework before Thursday, 9 p.m. Central Time, when Albert and I come on air once again. YouTube, we're almost to 1,000 subscribers. Subscribe.
What do we get? We get something. There's something. We don't get a plaque or anything, but there's some new features or enhancements you get with 1,000. By the way,
there's so many rules with YouTube. I don't even know. Anyway, we're at an hour and a half.
No, hey, we're right on time. Okay. Yeah. Again, thanks to everybody for coming out for the live stream. Hope you guys enjoyed this. And if you don't want to pick up the book, I think we did a pretty darn good job of giving you all the highlights and everything you need to know about it. So you're welcome. High five, bro. Okay, with that, roll credits, and we'll see you guys in a couple days.
You're still listening? Wow, that's amazing. Well, I'm here to give you the disclaimer. Normally we do a big, long, drawn-out disclaimer thing saying what's what and who's what and all that other stuff, but I think you guys kind of know that Lucasfilm and Disney have no affiliation with us at all, and we have none with them. We talk about Star Wars, which is their property, and all that other good, fun stuff, but I think you can tell which is our stuff and which is their stuff. If you can't, well, then send a lawyer to send an email to me, and I'll be glad to chat with them. Other than that, you know what's what, so that's your disclaimer.